Hi, I'm Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon.
And you are listening to the Optimized AF podcast.
We know life is hard. We're here to make it simple.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Optimized AF podcast. My name is Blake Rayhans.
And I'm Stacie Mallon, and we are talking about pitfalls of goal setting and commitment today. This is the second in our series talking about these very real pitfalls. And we did quite a bit of research to understand the psychology behind why people fail at their goals. And we sourced kind of the top 6 that we felt it, not just from the evidence and the research, but in our own personal experience in working with coaching clients and working with bigger corporate clients and also working with individuals on their personal goals. What are the things that we found to be the most relevant and the things that we've seen the most frequently? And one thing that we identified for the second set of 3 is excuses and rationale. And I think that it's one of the things that we all know that we do this, and we all know that we formulate, you can rationalize anything. If you've watched, do you ever watch the Game of Thrones?
Oh yeah.
So we just finished it because I was, I'm always a late bloomer.
I think I'm going to go back and watch it again.
Yeah, I'm a late bloomer, but it's a great, if you really are into psychology of human behavior, people can literally rationalize anything they want to. And so when you're in the throes of really committing and getting to a goal, one of the exercises that I've done in the past with people in doing one-on-one coaching sessions is actually vetting kind of through what are some of the things you may begin to rationalize in deviating from that goal. And so this is all about planning, which we've talked about before, but it is to some degree anticipating what you could possibly rationalize. And a big one for people that for fitness, just to stick to that topic, which we've talked about, is I'll do it later today. And so I've walked people through this a lot, where how many times when you say to yourself, if you're a morning workout person, when you say to yourself, oh, I'll get to it later today, what's your percent of the time that you actually get to that point? And if you're a person, you're like 90% of the time, I'm like, okay, well, that's probably not an excuse or a rationale. You're not rationalizing your way out of doing your movement that day. But if you're a person where the percentages are low, it's probably something to identify that it is an excuse that is a fallback for you that you use. And you need to kind of excommunicate that from your strategy.
Just think about why are excuses and rationales so powerful to people is because the most powerful story is the story you tell yourself. If you have made up in your mind a story or a dialogue or something and you're saying that's what excuses and rationale are all tied into. And like to your point, Stacie, we can all tell ourselves whatever story we want to, and then we start to justify and rationale why that story makes sense. Well, I did such a hard workout yesterday.
Right.
So I'll skip today's, or I'm a little bit sore. You talked in a previous episode, Stacie, about how you always commit to giving yourself 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I don't feel like doing it. My allergies are acting up, or I've got that sore muscle a little bit, but you always commit to 10 minutes because a lot of times once you get at least 10 minutes into it, you realize, no, I can do the full hour workout. I'm here, I'm moving, I'm committed, I'm going to do it. And then other times you say, no, my allergies really are kicking my butt today. I'm 10 minutes in and this is just not going to end well for me. So I did 10 minutes and I'm going to hop off. But bringing it back is the pitfall. You will tell yourself a story. You will reach a point through this goal process. You're executing. You're going down the path of getting the objective that you put in front of yourself, and you will tell yourself a story. You will come to a point where excuses and rationale will enter into that story, and you need to be able to avoid that. You need to understand that it's going to happen. You've got to even acknowledge that you're not above it. I think we all just naturally are going to allow some level of that into our storyline. You've just got to overcome that. You've got to rise above those excuses and rationales. Now, there's some outside influences too.
Yes.
I'm harping on your internal story. There's sometimes you're going to get some influences from the people around you that are not going to be supportive of your goal. It's not their goal. They have no idea why you don't want to go to the bar and get a $50 bar tab because your goal is to set aside, $5,000 before the end of February. that doesn't matter to them. They could give two shits about that. What they want to do is they want to go and party and have a good time, and they want you to spend 50, 100, 150 bucks by going out and having a great time. When it doesn't match them, they are going to heavily influence and be non-supportive of what you're trying to accomplish. Be understanding of that. Acknowledge that you're going to face it.
Well, and that brings us to pitfall number 2 today, which is consistently have a mechanism to remind yourself of the why. So we talked about having a why and having a purpose being a foundation of goal setting, that if you're not connected to that why. But one thing that we have both seen and watched and experienced ourselves, quite frankly, is when you start to distance yourself from the why, or you don't have a mechanism. This is why journaling is so powerful. We've talked about journaling a million times, and people also say it's hard. It's like meditation. It's an aspirational goal that you're going to meditate and journal. It doesn't have to be an aspirational goal. It's something that you could actually realize in your life. But I would say that if you journal, or if you even start journaling, hey, it's a 2-for-1. If you start journaling by just giving yourself a reminder of why you're connected to this goal every day, whether that's first thing in the morning or right before you go to bed, or as you say, your prayer in the middle of the day to get through the day, whatever that looks like for you. I think having a ritual, this is again back to habits and practices and behaviors, having a ritual that starts to be ingrained, that when you start to do that, I think it really reinforces your commitment to get to this goal.
Yeah, it's a very common one, and you can't really say it enough. I think just being able to reinforce that why and bringing it back to that as a reminder, that actually is a really good mechanism, like you said, for how to overcome those hurdles. We talked a lot about just these pitfalls, these obstacles. No matter which one we've given you, the reinforcement of your why is a really great tactic to bring it back to center, bring it back to focus, understand, why do I need to push through this obstacle? Why do I need to overcome this particular hardship that I've reached along the journey? So couldn't really emphasize that one enough for people. State it, write it down, remind yourself of it often. And when you get into a place where you don't feel like you're succeeding at your goal in the way you want to, go to that one by your default. Go to that one first and foremost and reinforce that why. So last but not least for this episode. So again, last episode we gave you 3 common pitfalls and how to overcome them or avoid them altogether. 3 in this one. The last one here we have is your goal doesn't match your identity. And that might sound a little weird when I say it. You're saying, well, what the hell does that mean? It's my goal. I obviously identify with it. So here's an example that I have for people. Let's say you say, I want to write a book. Let me rewind it here. Your identity is not defined, carved in stone, and always set forever and ever and ever. You're constantly evolving your identity. And sometimes we attach our identities to things that are, not healthy for us. And we identify with something, whether it be our career. And you say, well, gosh, I'm an accountant. Okay, that's what you do for work, but that's not your identity. It's not who you are. So I'm not going to go deep into that part of it. But what I do want to touch on is, if your goal is, in this example, to write a book, let's say your current identity is you haven't put pen to paper or had 100 keystrokes on a Word document in the last 2 years. Writing a book doesn't match your current identity. The flip side of that, if you are someone that habitually every single week writes a 500-word blog, writing a book matches your current identity. That's a good goal for you to set out. So a pitfall that people run into is they set these goals and they're really not their own. It doesn't match their current identity. It's not influenced by themselves alone. It's maybe something, I'm in this space with a bunch of colleagues, and I'll just harp on the same example. They're all writing books. And so you take on this goal and you say, well, I need to do the same thing. Well, no, you don't. You don't. If it doesn't match your identity, maybe what your goal needs to be is the first part of what I said, where you say, instead of writing a book, my goal is actually that I want to write 500 words once a week.
Right. And what's coming to mind for me is being the parent of teenagers. These 3 things that we've talked about today, when I think about the goals or lack of goal setting that teenagers create, it's a very real thing. I think for them, goal setting feels a little bit too adult and maybe too ethereal for them. But it's a good practice for anyone. But this comes to mind because, teenagers are the masters of rationalization, first of all. And so I think as you think about how do you utilize this in your personal life, we've talked a little bit about how to use this in your professional life. But if you have children, I think walking them through this process, like what are the things that you use to rationalize eating, terrible food? But also the why is a big piece. I think as parents, we innately understand the long-term effect of something that your children are doing.
Absolutely.
That you can see the car crash coming. We talk about this a lot. Screen time with teenagers. They spend an inordinate amount of time, especially since COVID. COVID's made it a lot worse. They're isolated, they're in their rooms, and they're staring. And so we have this situation in our house. They come out, they're like, my head hurts. You're like, no kidding, right? So you've been staring, your eyeballs are about to fall out of your head. You haven't had any food because you got sucked in as soon as you woke up this morning. But one thing that I've learned is until we help them connect to the why, which is whatever it is for them, right? Do they want to, do they have a long-term goal or a short-term goal or something they want to achieve or something that they want to get to? For one of my kiddos, it's, she wants to play volleyball in college. So sometimes I have to bring her back around to that, even though it feels very far out. I have to help her sometimes really reconnect to the why, because the mind-body connection, teenagers struggle with that mind-body connection. They struggle with the fact that their mind controls a lot of how they feel, and they have a hard time sometimes discerning what is mental and what is physical. And it is truly physically affecting. They truly physically have a headache. So in their mind, they're sick, right? That's what they categorize that as. So sometimes teasing that apart for teenagers is really hard. And I think that, again, this goes back to identity. Teenagers struggle with self-identity. So it also creates a situation where goal setting for them feels very challenging because they're very unsure of their own identity, especially, I would say, late preteens, early teenagers, especially. Teenagehood is all about confirming and solidifying in your first pass in life, your identity, right? They're highly influenced by external influences. And so they're struggling to find out who they are. Yeah. And so I think that I want this goal, but it doesn't match with their identity. They're not even sure what that really is at that point. So it just comes to mind as we're talking about this because it's something that's highly relevant to my current household, obviously.
Well, I wonder how many people right now, even non-teenagers, are dealing with that exact same thing based on what 2020 afforded all of us the opportunity to reevaluate our identities and what matters to us and these outside influences and factors that created the opportunity for us to question, okay, well, I just lost that job with the company that I'd been with for 5, 10, 15 years.
Right.
And if your identity was so wrapped up in that particular job or that company or that career, whatever that path was, you've got a real identity crisis on your hands of trying to decide, well, what am I? Who am I? What matters to me? And, maybe that doesn't resonate for everybody, but there's certainly an element of people that, because that was taken from them and that was such a big part of who they are, what they did, you might not be a teenager. You might be listening to this and be, middle-aged, late 30, whatever, and you're halfway through your career and you're still doing the same thing. You're going, well, crap, what is my identity?
Yeah, and I think this, as Grant toddled into the picture, it also affects us. It's a really good point, Blake, that 2020 had all of us, I think I can think of, and maybe this is not true universally, but it feels fairly universal, question that identity at a core level. And it's been a lot of discussion around who we are as parents versus who we are as professionals versus how we're showing up for our spouses, right? So maybe something we want to deep dive into on a later episode on how everyone is transforming those challenges into opportunities in 2021, because I think that it helped. It was painful, very painful for all of us in many, many ways. But what do you walk away with? And we're still in it. So I don't know what the answer to that question is. But I think one thing that's become highly relevant is who we are as parents and who we are as professionals has really blended dramatically together in ways that no one thought was going to happen in 2020. And I think that, really rectifying the fact that you're one human and that human experience is completely integrated. And whether I'm sitting here on my podcast and I'm getting texts from my teenagers, which is happening as we speak, or, Blake brought his kiddos into studio today because that was the only choice and the only option for us to commit to get these episodes done. That's everyone's life right now. So I think going back to one of the pitfalls we talked about in the last episode is acknowledging what your challenges are going to be, what the obstacles are going to be, but not allowing that to become an excuse or a rationalization to depart. So to Blake's credit, he called me and said, hey, I have my kids, I'm going to bring them. Is it okay if they come? Of course, this is life. This is how life is right now. Yep. It didn't derail us from getting to our goal. But I think for a lot of people, they're still struggling to tease that out.
Yeah, and I think let's be real. It's obviously it's created additional challenges, perhaps. And if you listen to this, you might have heard a little bit of background noise here and there. And I think that the fear of people has been conditioned in us. So we're derailing from our topic a little bit, but I think it's relevant for this. So a pitfall sometimes is related to goal accomplishment, but also acknowledging that over the course of time up until this pandemic, we've been sort of conditioned, and it's changed in recent years, but that you have to separate personal and work. You have to be able to shut it off at the door. So 2020, I don't think it was the first thing that forced the hand of this, but it has certainly accelerated the reality for people to understand the integration of that. You don't turn it off, and you said, to leave your personal life at home in the corporate world, in the professional world, is sort of like leaving the best parts of who you are and not bringing them to the workplace. So,
But I think that, let's say this, Blake, I want to say this overtly to parents. It also, we have many times divorced ourselves from the ability and the belief and the commitment to get to where we want to get to. We feel like we need to set that aside sometimes because of our responsibilities as parents. And this is not, this is highly relevant to women, but it is not isolated to women. This is parents in general. There's a lot of fathers out there that have done that same thing. And I think that what I find exciting about where we are today is that I don't believe that anybody has to give up where they want to get to from their professional goals any longer, given their personal circumstances.
They're no longer mutually exclusive things. You don't have to, decide whether you're going to be incredibly successful in your career or an incredible parent.
Yep. And I think I've told this story before. I got into medical school and didn't go because I had someone I very much respected that was a female doctor in the practice that I was in say to me, it is not possible to be a great mom and a great doctor. She's just flat out said that statement to me, and it shifted my mindset dramatically. And I ended up, and I'm grateful to not go to medical school. I don't have any medical school debt. And I'm not sure I would have been super stoked to be a doctor. God bless you all in the medical profession and first responders. But I will say that I don't regret it, but I will say that it's a belief I carried with me for a long time that I had to choose those things. And so I think I'm very grateful in 2021 to be walking into this year knowing a knowingness that we don't have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
And you can get to those very real, tangible goals, manifest the life that you want to love, that beautiful life that you deserve to have. You don't have to give that up regardless of your personal situation.
Yeah. So bonus pitfall, I guess, that we kind of threw in there is that the pitfall, to summarize it, is there are conditioned beliefs that we have inside of us from, whatever historical events in our past or environments that we've been able to absorb from other people. You've got to challenge those. Okay, so the tactic to overcome that is you have to challenge what you've previously believed to be true. Question, why do I believe that to be true? Why is that condition the way that it is? Does that need to be that way? Can it be better? Can it be different? And you have to come to a realization that the answer is probably yes in a lot of cases. And so the recap to this episode is 3 plus a bonus, right? So excuses and rationalization, we talked about. The story you tell yourself is the most powerful story because it's the one that your inner voice, your mind over matter sort of a thing, that all connected is going to influence your behaviors. And so you have to be recognizing, have a recognition of that. We talked about how that is, not just your personal story, how you can allow outside influences to that. You need to surround yourself with supportive people to your goal. If you constantly have people telling you, why do you do that? Don't do that. Come with us instead. That's going to be a challenge that's not serving you well. You need to just avoid that challenge. However, as you mentioned, Stacie, the next one is reinforcing and constantly reminding yourself of the why. Have that at the ready. Anytime you get in front of a challenge, obstacle, hurdle, whatever the case may be, you've got to be ready to say, this is why I'm doing this. This is what matters. You got to be able to be doing that. Identity. So not matching the goal to your current identity. I want to emphasize current identity because it's not always that's set in stone. You have to be able to adjust.
Your identity as a father.
My identity as a father right now. I got the 3-year-old. My 3-year-old going. You guys need to be done.
Yeah, and then the conditioned belief that
Yep.
we have to be perfect, right? This conditioned belief that as a podcast we're professional podcasters, and so this has to be a perfect recording or somehow perfect. So those are the 4 big pitfalls.
Yeah. Well, and if you're part of our audience, you know that this is important to Stacie and I. We don't want to be putting on some sort of a false perception of who we are as people, and that these things we're talking to you guys about. These are things that we deal with. These are things that we bring to you because we have them in our everyday lives. We also coach other people and other leaders to overcome these things in our professional lives. We do this within the home life. We do this within the workspace, and this is our reality.
Yeah.
And so thank you for, I just, personally for me today, especially, thank you for coming along on this journey today with the additional background noise and the editing and everything. But
there are backup singers today.
It is the reality of our life. So when we think about goals, just think about that as an example. You're going to have other little challenges along the way. So we've given you some common pitfalls that people run into, and these are done, like you said. We did a lot of research and kind of we cherry picked some of the top ones. We also cherry picked some that we thought were more relevant to this year because of what people are carrying forward into 2021 based on the pandemic in 2020. It's not over yet, of course, but everyone had that initial gut check, about 10 months ago, and now we're hitting that natural
reality.
January 1st reset button people like to think is there. And so we're bringing it home with some hopefully very easily digestible tactics that you can say, okay, now that I understand these things that I'm going to face, and I've been reminded of some familiar ones about why goals have failed in the past, I'm better prepared to overcome them and then achieve the things that I want to achieve this year.
We are wishing you an amazing start to 2021, a goal-oriented, goal-getting, goal-setting, goal-reaching January, and can't wait to have our guest on the next episode and to see you very soon for our next episode.
All right, take care, everyone.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to our show. You can find Blake and I on social media channels at Blake Rayhans and at Stacie Mallon.
Be sure to follow Optimized AF on Instagram and rate and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. See you next time.